Good morning. As you heard from Reverend Ruth making the announcements this morning, we're starting a new month and a new topic, integrity, based on the book of the month, the title of which is, If You Know Who You Are, You'll Know What to Do. In the book, he starts off telling a story about a friend, a colleague of his at a conference table, trying to figure out with his company some big decisions, and they were sitting with legal counsel, and the counsel was explaining technically the letter of the law, and the colleague was becoming more and more frustrated. At some point, he just burst out and said, "I'm not asking if it's legal. I'm asking if it's right." And that is the theme of the book, integrity, which he defines as doing the right thing when we know it's the right thing to do. He also says integrity is who we are when we're being watched and how it matches when we're not being watched. In ministerial training, sometimes we talk about making sure that ministers' on-stage presence matches their off-stage presence, Sometimes I'm wearing this headpiece, and I might forget to turn it off and wander around the social hall. Wouldn't that be interesting to see if it matched? Or in Science of Mind, the way we say it is that integrity is when what you say matches what you do. There's symmetry, it's equal. And that's important for us in our teaching to examine. We're accustomed to saying in Science of Mind, my mind is the center of divine activity. Well, do I pay attention to what I allow to run through that mind? Or is it just something I say? Sometimes we'll say, I believe in the unity of all life. Well, does that show up in the way I treat people? Am I dealing with people as if they're part of that one beautiful fabric of unity? Or is it convenient for me to sometimes exclude people and make enemy images out of them because we have a difference of some kind? Sometimes in our teaching we'll say, there is a power for good in the universe, and I can use it. Well, how am I using it? In what way am I using it? What would it look like if I were to use it in such a way that it matches? Or are these just things that I say? They sound like a good idea that probably somebody is observing. So he talks about two kinds of integrity. Personal integrity, that's when we are authentically the person that we were born or created to be and not somebody else. And then there is moral integrity, and that is when we do what is right to do because it is the right thing to do. This Christmas Eve story, the story we're going to be talking about at our two candle lighting ceremonies in the evening, December the 24th, is the story of Christmas itself, which in the tradition of the great epic stories includes the ongoing balancing out between what is right and what is wrong and what is good and what is bad, and all of the decisions, moral and personal, that an ordinary person faces in the course of living their life. Like, for example, one of the figures in the story, Joseph, if you know, his young bride-to-be, visited by angels and now pregnant. And what's the right thing to do? What's the correct decision to make? Especially when you take time to compare the consequences of choosing this compared to choosing that. And then it appears that integrity is not always convenient. He tells a beautiful story in the book. An elderly man, he writes, it's a parable. An elderly man once spoke of the wisdom gained from a lifetime of rich experience. As I have aged, my priorities have changed and narrowed, and I'm down to one. I focus daily on it, and my life is guided by it. It is, don't fall. Now, on the surface, that sounds like a rather good idea. Don't fall down. It's probably a good idea for us as we become older. But as the way of parables are, there is a parallel story that's contained in the phrase, don't fall away from my integrity. So it becomes very helpful to explore the ways that we wander from the path. They can be subtle. On page 3 of the book is the story that sets us up for this month's exploration. The story is told about Hendrik Kramer, a remarkable lay missionary from the Dutch church who spent much of his adult life in Indonesia. He was in his native Holland when the Second World War broke out. The Gestapo dominated the nation of Holland, forcing Dutch Jews into places like Buchenwald and Dachau, the concentration camps. Late one night, a group of Dutch laypersons came to see Hendrik Kramer. They said to him, Dr. Kramer, what shall we do? Our neighbors are dying. We don't know what is going to become of us as a nation. Please, if you can, tell us what to do. We've got to do something, and we have to do it now. And Hendrik Kramer said to them, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I will tell you who you are. And if you know who you are, then you'll know what to do. He opened his Bible to 1 Peter and began to read. And I paraphrase, you are a chosen group, a royal priesthood, a dedicated nation, a people claimed by divinity for its own to proclaim the triumphs of divinity. A divinity that has called you out of darkness into the light. And Dr. Kramer closed his Bible and said, now, do you know who you are? Then you'll know what to do. Thanking him, the group left his house that night, and they formed the Dutch resistance. So there it is, a worthy consideration. If you know who you are, you'll know what to do. He also tells the story of Pablo Casals, the famous cellist, who was conducting a master class. And the musicians were sitting playing before the master, waiting for his feedback. And one cellist finished his performance, and the master said, you played all the right notes, but you didn't play the music. You see, that's the idea. If is a big word in that sentence. If you know, then you will. Because when you don't know, it can show up as walking through this life in a kind of empty-hearted way. Doing everything that's right by the letter of the law, but not right by you. I had a really good experience of that in Southern California. I had gone to a government service office to get a legal document fulfilled, and it was quite clear to me that all the people in the office working there had been told to smile. But it did not make their service any friendlier. They were fulfilling the letter, but it wasn't matching what was inside. It was a kind of professional courtesy, a professional warmth that was sort of assumed for that position, but did not reflect what was going on inside. At least that was my projection of what was going on. he says there is a word for that: hypocrisy. Pretending to be something that is not in my heart and my soul. Pretending to be something that I know I'm not. Again, if I know who I am, or if, even better, owning who I am and living from that. Yesterday we did the intentions workshop, setting intentions for 2018. And what was so lovely about that is we spent a good deal of time exploring and discovering what is actually in my heart so that I can own it. He offers questions in the book that help us do that on our own, and we'll use these questions later on in our meditation. They are: what do I value? What do I believe? What is important? What is precious? What is sacred to me? And then to compare that to, what do I say I value? What do I say I believe? What do I say is important? What do I say is precious and holy? He says that we must intentionally claim who we are. I remember when I first encountered this teaching, the science of mind, at the Center for Spiritual Living, and I heard the idea that there is only one life, and that life is God, that it is sacred and holy and perfect, and that we are all one in it, and that through the integrity of this holy oneness, we are connected to each other. And that what I do to the least among us, I do to all of us. And that impacted me because I had to start looking at my habits. And that's when I started to drop habits like stealing. Yeah, like lying, like cheating. Now, I'm not talking about huge acts of stealing. I'm talking about the subtle ones that creep in. Like, taking the paper clips home from the office, Like the small lies that make it convenient for me not to adhere to the truth because I have a different agenda. And not only did I make these adjustments out of a sense of personal safety, because I had heard about the law of cause and effect as well, but I made those choices because when I took a look inside, I found that was the real me wanting to come out. We must make choices so that we can act in ways that show that within us lives a power, that within us is a consciousness listening in on our thoughts, responding to us. We must make choices that show that we have a conviction, deep-rooted, anchored conviction, that we're connected to each other. We say things in our movement here at our center, according to our vision statement. We say that we value sharing, community. It says in our statement, we see a world in which there is ongoing sharing of heart and resources, which in community is important. We value kindness. So we should be making choices that show that. Recently, last year, we received a bequest from one of our members who passed away of $900,000. So it would be natural for us to tithe on that, to participate in the circulation and the flow. And we did. We sent $45,000 to reimburse parents and centers who had sent their teenagers to teen camp. And the other $45,000 we sent to international study groups, outreach programs, and centers in foreign territories. So that $90,000 went out as a symbol of our circulation. And don't you know that $90,000 in the aftermath of the fires could have been put to really good use here locally? But according to the law of reciprocity, We received from centers and individuals all over our country in excess of $80,000 to help support people who are affected by the fire. And we will probably receive more. In other words, staying true to what we say, we are now in a position of having received more than we gave when you add in the goodwill and the effect and the faith and the trust that comes with it. A net gain in spirit. And it came in unpredictable ways, unexpected ways. You can't plan this out. So how do we stray from our path? Well, they're subtle, the ways of straying from the path, and simple. And the one he mentions is as simple as this: ignoring integrity. Ignoring your personal integrity or moral integrity. Maybe it's through following a path that is not ours to follow. But it is society's path, and everybody is doing it. So I don't listen to the voice in me because I'm just going with the crowd. Now I remember through the teaching of Science of Mind, I learned about the power of my word as a result of this one overarching spiritual presence from which I inherit my creative nature, that my words have a certain power to direct, co-create. I heard about that. I learned about that. And so I started to pay attention to what I was saying. And that's when I realized how frequently I used the word hate, because it was so common in cultural usage. I hate this. Oh, don't you hate it when? I just hate that. And so it took me an effort of will to interrupt that and stop it. Not only that, I started to feel the pressure of reverting to the way and the language of the group. It's very easy to ignore integrity when something says inside of you, not for me, and the whole group says for us. If I do pay attention to my integrity, when I pay attention to my integrity, when we pay attention to our integrity, it builds self-esteem. Not in the sense of making me better than other people, but in the sense of anchoring me in my identity, anchoring me in the awareness of what lives in me. We are all one, and society is a group mind event. Let it be obsessed with superficiality, pointless making enemy images of people who are living life differently. But let me be obsessed, fascinated, interested in, immersed in the divinity that lives in me, that lives in you, that created you, the spiritual energy out of which you are formed, the love of the universe that flows through you every time you make a choice and give and share. Let me stay rooted in that so that, according to the scriptures, I can say, wherever I go, thou art there. Let my self-esteem not come from what I've achieved or how I compare myself to somebody or what I own. Let it come from the one life that is in me. Another way of wandering from the path, he names it as narcissism. It's another detour. That's when I slip into the habit of thinking I am greater than what I am, which is tricky, right? Because we are trained to appreciate the greatness of the living God in us. And there is that tipping point where I turn it into narcissism, and now I'm better than everybody else. It's called self-importance. I'm important more so than anybody else. What happened to the unity of all life? And he says there are key words to look for when exploring this detour from the path. And one is grandiosity. when I exaggerate the expression of myself to appear favored above others. I'm so special that I don't have to follow the agreements of society that don't apply to me. It shows up in the second word it shows up as entitlement. I can say that I believe in truth and it shows up as honesty, but I am so special that it applies only to other people. So the antidote to grandiosity is humility. The humility of sensing my place in the scheme of things, taking my place in the community of beings as part of and not soaring above. And the antidote to entitlement is sensitivity to how what I say I believe translates into how I treat life. And then the other way of departing from the path. Oh, it's a subtle one. It's called drifting. You just didn't know it, but you're off course. What could cause that? Oh, so many things. Maybe it's just listening to voices of your culture, of your family, of your society, so much so that you end up giving more airtime to those voices than to the affirmative love language that is in my heart and wants to come out in my prayers. So I'm following directions that aren't even mine. I find myself seduced by dealing with the important things of the world, and then at night I do 5 minutes affirmative thinking in a prayer. Oh, I've drifted. To come back to my integrity, why would I let the voice of acrimony and competition be the filter through which I interpret everything in the world? Surely, as a metaphysician, I would be dealing with the things of the world, and as they appear before me, there would be running in my consciousness the voice that says, there is only one life. And it is God, and it is perfect, and it is my life, and it is all life. And let me meet this apparition. How amazing that this one life would be disguised like this today. Sometimes I drift because I give more time to the negative self-talk, wherever it comes from, than I do to the affirmative rethinking of the truth of my being. The voices, I can't do this, I shouldn't do this because I'm that, I'm too big, I'm too small, I'm too old, I'm too young, life is dangerous, the world is dangerous, people aren't good. I've ended up drifting so much so that mire seems more real to me than who I am. And it lulls me into a sense of sleepwalking through this world. Integrity, however, when I pay mind to it, and I return to it, and I refresh it in me, has the effect of keeping me alert to what is going on inside, so that I can refer to it as the filter through which I meet this world and its beings and its people, and I stay on my path a little more every day. Now, if I know who I am, it becomes easier. So let us use the questions that he suggests to discuss and discover that. So I invite you to breathe in and to exhale, letting your eyes close, if that is comfortable. and to turn within as if you are going to inquire with a presence that is not only all around you and in and through all life, but inside you too, like a holy presence, like the principle of wisdom itself. And if we were to approach that kind of divinity, surely we would do it with a sense of holiness and openness. And it is not like we are inquiring, asking these questions, expecting to be forced to produce an answer on the spot or expecting to receive. No, it's like planting a seed in the form of a question that is going to continue to deepen and yield its responses over time, maybe in images, maybe in a felt experience, maybe in a thought, an idea, maybe tomorrow. We simply lay the question at the altar of our being, asking, what do I really value? What do I really believe? What is truly important to me? What is precious? What is sacred? And having planted those questions like seed, and according to our teaching then, we yield, surrender. We give way to the creative law of this spiritual universe. We expect them to work in our beings and produce results. So there is no tension, and there is no apprehension, there is no reaching. We have already done the work in mind, and now we move forward in our lives with something new percolating to guide us and sustain us. And we say together, and so it is. I invite you to breathe in deeply and to sigh.